We will go first.
You will go first.
I can't find this book, but I read a Pat Barker, Women of Troy book. So this was very, very fantastic.
Good.
It's about the Trojan War, but it is told from the perspective. This is the second one of the series, I believe, Silence of the Women. It's told from the perspective of the women, because what tends to happen is all the history is, from the perspective of the warriors, from the perspective of the men. Now, there is a trilogy. There's Women of Troy, Silence of the Girls, and The Voyage Home. So this is the middle one, Silence of the Girls, Pat Barker. Best book that I've read this month, I feel like. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I really, really enjoyed it. And before we go any further, I'll have to probably give it its yeah. But I do not have the clip to hand. No, I do.
Very professional. This is why the literature lads are beating us.
They are. They are. Don't listen to the literature lads, incidentally, because it's kind of a garbage setup. It's just these two guys just talking about books, and it's like, why would I want to hear their opinion? Why would anyone ever want to listen to that? And they have like a silly mascot and everything. It's just a garbage show, So,
oh, I thought you were talking about the book.
No, so this book, okay, it's set during the events of the Iliad, the invasion of Troy, and we have our female character as our lead, and it's the events from her perspective. So her city is sacked, the men are killed. They even mention that they start killing the women who are pregnant just in case they might give birth to a boy who would grow up and get revenge. So any pregnant woman gets speared in the belly. And then they kill all the men, and they take the other non-pregnant women to slavery for the Greeks. And you've got like Achilles and Odysseus and Agamemnon and all the famous characters are in this. So it's kind of cool if you're into that, which I am. So it's a very good book, but it's pretty rough in many parts. For example, spearing pregnant women in the belly. That was pretty rough to read, and there's a lot of things like that. And the lads are super ladsy the whole time. So there's even bits where they're singing like a drinking song about basically like just have sex with her, kill her, have sex with her again, dig up her corpse and have sex with her again. Like it's really, really rough stuff. And it's supposed to evoke that reaction because it's supposed to be making you realize how horrible and sexist like the whole society was and how women were not given any place at all. She's given to Achilles as she's very beautiful. So she's given to Achilles as a prize. He picks her out of everyone else. Initially, she worries, like, he's just going to beat me or whatever. I'm a slave. He could do anything. He doesn't. He doesn't treat her as badly as he might have done. But yes, she is there to serve drinks at dinner and then have sex with him, basically. So that's her role. Achilles is a friend, an older gentleman, Patroclus, who is kind of nice to her at times and will you can drink some wine and this kind of stuff. And he'll always say to her, I can probably make Achilles marry you if you want. That will make your life easier.
And you won't be...
And you'll have rights and everything.
Yeah.
But then she's like, yeah, but this man killed my family. So I don't want to marry him. So she has that moral dilemma. Like, do I do what would be easier for me? Or what? I find this man morally repugnant. So that's the problem. And also, she's not really sure if Patroclus could make that happen anyway. He just says he could. He's the only person who can speak freely with Achilles. He can give him a pat on the shoulder or tell him he's made a bad idea. Everyone else is kind of afraid of him, Agamemnon is in charge, but they all think he's an ass, basically, and outright say that. And they give him no respect. No respect.
Yeah.
But they do give Achilles a lot of respect. There's a funny moment where she's like, right, the first night I had to sleep with Achilles. And she's like, well, thankfully, his lovemaking is as efficient as his killing. So that was funny. But then he starts to get rougher with her as time goes on. He's having some yearning. His mother was lost to the sea. They've decided that makes her a sea goddess. So at one point, she comes in out of the water smelling of the sea, and he just goes crazy, and he's like all over her, smelling her hair and everything, and he's obsessed with like the smells of the sea, and he goes out swimming at night talking to his mother, the sea goddess, and everything. He doesn't treat her that badly, but he doesn't really care about her at all. Like, she doesn't get a say, she doesn't get to participate in the conversation. They'll talk about her right in front of her, you know?
Mm.
So what happens is eventually there's a big moral quandary, which is from the Iliad. Achilles is not fighting, and they're now losing. So all his own men are kind of saying, well, we're losing because of you. You could end this war by fighting. And the war went on for years, but Achilles was their best fighter. So all the Greeks start to die, and they blame Achilles for not helping them, and he's like, this is Agamemnon's problem, this is not my problem. Why would I care? And they said, well, you signed up for the war, you should help us, you brought all your men here. And he's like, yeah, I signed up for the war. I was 17 at the time. That was a decade ago. I'm done. Which is maybe fair, I guess.
Mm. There's also a major character in Getting Over to Troy, though, and I don't know how much it's going to connect to like Agamemnon's story with his daughter. Like,
well, Cassandra appears in the final scene, at the very, very end of the book, which was nice.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there will be a third book in the series. This is kind of the middle part. At one point, Priam, the king of Troy, sneaks into their camp, and Achilles, again, is very typical of the Greek culture that they had. He was like, well, he's not my guest. He's coming to talk to me. So, like, no one can kill him. And this girl is like, please take me away. And Priam's like, no, because that's part of the hospitality culture. Like, he's treating me nicely, so I can't betray him. Sorry, you're on your own. And they treat that very importantly and like very formally with the hospitality culture. She has the chance to escape, and she jumps into like a bundle of hay that's being carted out at the same time as like Priam's leaving or whatever. And then she doesn't do it. It's really sad. She's like, well, what am I going back to? My house has been burned down and my family are killed. And the saddest moment of the whole book, she's like, guess I just go back to Achilles then.
Oh.
And she goes back, and Achilles says, why did you come back? And he knew that she was going to escape, and he was going to let her. And that's really sad. Patroclus dies in a really selfish move from Achilles. He's like, I'm not gonna fight in the war, but the army will be rallied if they think I'm fighting, so we'll dress my friend up in my armor, and then my friend will get killed.
Oh.
And then he's like, oh no, my friend is dead. No, I'm gonna fight. It's like, if you'd done that yesterday, your friend wouldn't be dead. And he's mourning him, and he's like cuddling with his corpse and everything. It's like, this is kind of on you, though. You could have avoided this.
So Achilles is not as good as he's made out to be by like Euripides and them.
But he was the best warrior, so they glorified that,
of
course. But that's something that Euripides would glorify. That's not something that like a 21st century woman would necessarily glorify in her novel, and that's why we see the difference.
Fair enough.
At one point, a big important part is Agamemnon takes this girl away from Achilles. I can't remember the reason, but at some point he's like, you owe me something, so I'm taking her away. He tells Achilles later he never slept with her. Everyone kind of knows that's a lie, but he has to say it because then he wants her back. So he's like, you can have her back because I never touched her. And everyone's like, well, we don't. Okay, you have to say that, but we know it's not true.
Yeah.
And that's
that.
But it's a big part of it. But they're not treating her. She doesn't get a say in it or anything like that. It's just like, well, I want her back. Well, no, I want her because she's pretty. It's just like, oh, I guess I'm just supposed to go with whoever wins this, dick swinging contest, basically. I have no opinion here. And it's kind of sad to see the way the women are treated. And there's other scenes. They're at war. So there's other sad scenes. There's plague at one point, gets in the camp. And this one guy's going crazy trying to kill all the rats. And then he dies of the plague. And they have to tell him on his deathbed, like, don't worry, you got rid of the rats. And it's kind of... They do show, like, affection for each other in that ultra macho kind of way that you would expect warriors to be.
Yeah.
But there's sad moments where you just see, like, slave women getting dragged around the streets by the hair or something, It's really not pleasant in certain scenes.
And that's the best book of the month.
Yeah. It was good because it's set in ancient Greece. Well, that's the main reason.
Yeah.
But it's also well written, and Pat Barker is kind of a renowned author. You'll see her books in all the bookshops now. And it really gets... I think it's something that was really overdue, and she's not the only author doing it. We went to the bookshop and we saw other people doing this, like rewriting some of these tales. It's really good to have them from the perspective of a woman. So first of all, you're taking... No one wants to read the Iliad. I'm sorry. It's really boring.
Yeah.
But let's take those stories, redo them. I mean, even Euripides was doing that back then. So let's redo them, make them like more accessible, more fun to read, and then why not have it from the perspective of the characters that were completely overlooked before, right? We went to like a lecture about that, for example.
Yeah.
So I think this is really good, and it's nice to see the way the characters relate. But the big moral dilemma, which is the same one from the Iliad, is is Achilles a good guy? Could he? Is it his moral duty to help or not? And I don't know.
He kind of did. If he were just a bystander, maybe not.
I
But
guess
he is a big part of it,
at one
and
point,
why it happens and all that. I mean,
Agamemnon says, you can have the woman back, you can have, 20 horses and gold and everything else. And Achilles, please just help us in the war. And Achilles is like, no, I want King Agamemnon here in person telling me he's sorry. And Agamemnon's like, I'm not going to do that. You can have literally anything you want, but I'm not going to admit I was wrong to take your slave from you in the first place. And Achilles is like, well, then I'm not helping. They're both so egomaniacal
oh yeah.
when lives are at stake, of their friends even, and it's sad.
Was Paris a bad guy then?
It depends on
Which story?
which story. Yeah, was she kidnapped and she go willingly? Interestingly, there's one point where when they have Priam, and Achilles says this, he's like, "Hold on, I'm gonna treat him well because he's my guest." But I could ask for anything I want. I could ask for Helen. I could say, I will only let you out alive if you give us Helen, and the war would end. He's like, but that would be immoral because you're my guest. So he doesn't do it. And then he lets the war go on, and his friends die, and so forth.
And he dies.
So, yeah, he doesn't die in the book, but yeah, we don't get that far.
Fair.
But it's hard to see him as a good guy, I think, to be honest. It's also very clear that no one thinks Agamemnon is a good guy. All the guys are just like, this guy is useless. He's a terrible leader. He's so selfish, so egomaniacal.
Even in the play called Agamemnon, he comes back with a mistress. Like, yeah, he's not meant to be a good guy.
Yeah, basically. I do feel for Achilles once when his friend dies, because they're like, well, you're useless now. You can't eat, you can't fight, you can't sleep, you can't even shine anymore. He's just can't motivate himself to do anything.
Mm.
And you kind of feel for him then. His best friend's died, But the most important point and the salient point about this book is it's giving you that kind of more feminist approach, and it's showing you how terribly the women were treated. And how terribly the slaves were treated, technically, but specifically the women as well.
Mm.
And I think that's important, and I think that, it's really good to do that. So I loved it, and yeah, I would happily read more Pat Barker for sure. So I'll give that a recommendation.